Hi YouTube, I'd like to talk today about my lupus discovery. I discovered that I had lupus within the past few months. It was during my pregnancy. So I found out in February of 2022 that I had lupus. Last summer of 2021 I started experiencing some symptoms. And I want to tell you when I started experiencing the symptoms and a little backstory so there's an idea about what factors may or may not be related to my lupus. I had just gotten the 2019 jab. I'm phrasing it that way because I don't want to be flagged for conspiracy. This is not to say that I am in favor of it or against it. I'm just sharing my general experience, by the way. So I had gotten that in May 2019. And shortly after I had that, I started experiencing really extreme gastrointestinal issues. My diet at the time had been some meats and some dairy, like turkey and cheese. And then I started experiencing really bad gastrointestinal issues afterwards. And then after that, extreme fatigue. I'd be like driving on the road and I'd feel like I needed to pass out, like I really needed to pull over and go to sleep. And I did that a few times. So I was having these really extreme symptoms and I knew that something was wrong with me. Shortly after that, I actually found out that I had parasites. Ironically and weirdly enough, my cat had worms, and I found out just by her feces. So I went to a doctor, an emergency room, because I said, I'm experiencing weird symptoms in my body, and they seem to identify with the symptoms of parasites. So I was experiencing nausea, fatigue, and I went in there and I said, can you just please prescribe me the prescription? And they said, okay, sure, because there's not a whole lot of side effects, we can go ahead and do it. They said, even though we're not necessarily seeing anything in your stool samples, we'll go ahead and give it to you because you're insisting. So I went ahead and took that. It was Biltricide is what they called it. And I was able to see these different parasites emerging from my body, mostly stool, some vomit. I don't want to be too descriptive. This is for the sakes of awareness so that we can understand what factors are at play here. So after that happened, I started switching my diet. I changed my lifestyle. I recalled different things that I had been doing before, as I'm actually a yoga teacher, and I fell back off some of these lifestyle things that I learned in yoga teacher training. I started picking them back up again, such as having a plant-based diet, exercising frequently. So I started changing and adjusting my lifestyle because I was experiencing weird symptoms. And even though I stopped, or even though that parasitic cleanse that was prescribed to me through a doctor was just a one-time dose. So even after that, I started experiencing some symptoms again, fatigue, nausea, and this was during the process of my transition of my diet. So I started doing this switch, right? And then I stopped having symptoms when I started then working at a vitamin shop. I started working at Vitamin Shop because I was really interested in different vitamins and herbs to help me heal and soothe some of the symptoms that I was experiencing. So I started taking an assortment of different herbs and vitamins, and I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video if you wish to see what herbs and vitamins I've been taking to help reduce my symptoms. So I started working at a vitamin shop, and my symptoms went away. I was really hoping that whatever I had simply just gone away, and that was that. So after that, my husband and I started trying for baby Genesis, and when baby Genesis was in the womb, I thought everything was okay. I was asymptomatic. I thought I was good to go. Unfortunately, I started reducing some of the helpful vitamins and herbs that I was taking, because they say on the back of it you should ask your doctor what they think if you are pregnant or should become pregnant. So I stopped taking some herbs just out of fear of not knowing what it might do. And that's when some of my symptoms started coming back. I started having what I now know is called flare-ups when I started having extreme morning sickness. Now, I thought it was morning sickness because I was pregnant, but it was out of control. And I know this because prior to baby Genesis, I had a baby about 7-8 years ago. So I knew that this was more than just morning sickness. I was experiencing like extreme nausea for a couple days in a row. And so I knew that something was going on with me in my body and that it was not just morning sickness. So I went to see the doctor. I went to see the OBGYN, and finally we got an ultrasound. And at this appointment, they discovered in February 2022 that baby Genesis had a slow heart rate. Sinus bradycardia is what it's called. And so when they discovered that her heart rate was slower, I was immediately put in touch with a pediatric cardiologist who referred me to another hospital. And throughout the length of the pregnancy, I followed up with a pediatric cardiologist. And so during this time, I was starting to figure out something else has to be wrong. Shortly after I got in touch with a new pediatric cardiologist, I got a call from the original hospital telling me that my blood results were back, and it showed that I had SLE, lupus, and rheumatoid arthritis. And this is when things kind of puzzle pieces started coming together. That's when I realized that the morning sickness I was experiencing were actually lupus flare-ups. So I started adjusting my diet and lifestyle furthermore. I had been eating some processed foods. I kind of refined that. I got a lot of my foods then from Whole Foods instead of eating out as much. I had been eating more fish prior because I had been pescatarian, and then I started reducing that, and when I did eat fish, it was only like wild caught salmon instead of just a regular packaged food. And so I thought I was going to be okay, or I had high hopes, honestly, that things were going to work out, because as through the length of the pregnancy, baby Genesis, her heart was like decent. I mean, it wasn't the pace where it usually would be in a normal pregnancy, but it wasn't terrible. They said that it was pretty consistent, that there wasn't fluid built up around her heart. So I was starting to feel a little bit more hopeful that I had this lupus under control and that we were good to go. But then she was born and she had further abnormalities. So she had Hirschsprung's disease, which is related to the gastrointestinal tract. And then she also has sinus bradycardia still, and she had a PDA closure that needed to take place in the hospital. So she was in the NICU for quite some time, and I'm going to make a later video about that for those who are interested in learning more about baby Genesis and her story and our story of helping heal her. But for the sake of today's video, what happened then with my lupus is baby Genesis has since been born, and I've started to experience more flare-ups, and not too extreme to the point where I'm rushing to the hospital, but it's definitely some noticeable symptoms such as hair loss and fatigue, some nausea, sometimes like little scaly, like flaky skin. So when I started experiencing these symptoms more recently, I decided I've got to share a video about this. I've got to put what I know out there and maybe help other people piece together the puzzle pieces. Maybe or maybe not, you've experienced similar things that may or may not be correlated. So what I do know and what is fact and was verified by doctors that I've been seeing for myself and baby Genesis is that those who have autoimmune diseases are prone to infection. So whether or not parasites are correlated to an autoimmune disease or not, when you do have an autoimmune disease, you are more prone to any sort of infection or illness. And as for the symptoms that I've been experiencing lately, and talking about the herbs and vitamins that I'm using to help reduce some of the symptoms that I've been experiencing, well, I've been taking turmeric for inflammation. It's also related to cardiovascular health. I also take garlic, which is related to cardiovascular health and keeping the blood flowing smoothly. I've been taking magnesium, which is also heart healthy and helps the body to relax and helps pass any stools along. And I've also been taking vitamin D. And vitamin D, there's studies and research out there that shows that those who have vitamin D deficiency are more likely to have autoimmune symptoms. So I've been taking about 2,000 IU of vitamin D daily. I've also been taking chlorella and some other herbs that are helpful for detoxing heavy metals from the body. So with this assortment of vitamins and herbs, I'm starting to feel a bit better. I'm starting to feel more asymptomatic, although I still have some hair fallout and some occasional joint discomfort, especially when I'm waking up in the morning. But for the most part, I'm feeling pretty decent. The other thing I've been doing is having a very plant-based diet. I've reduced some of my fish intake, as I know that fish contains heavy metals sometimes. So by reducing my fish intake, I'm hoping to become more alkaline in my body and less prone to infection or disease. The other thing that I've been doing lately that has really helped some of my lupus symptoms is that I've been cleaning. So I've been like bleaching my floors, I've been scrubbing the kitchen, bathroom with Clorox wipes, I've been using aromatherapy, putting antimicrobial herbs into a diffuser with filtered water and diffusing that, and it's been really helpful. I think the reason why it's important to clean when you have an autoimmune disease especially is because those with autoimmune diseases are more prone to infection and illness. Since I have 2 daughters and a family and a great career that I'm seeking to grow ahead of me, it's really important for me to stay in the most optimal health and well-being that I can. I hope that you found this video helpful, especially if you have an autoimmune disease. My heart really goes out to you. I know how it feels and you're not alone. Let me know what you thought of this video. If anything resonates with you or you have any tips or suggestions for others with an autoimmune disease, please leave a comment. I would love to read that, and I'm sure our community would as well. Many blessings to you. Take care and be well.